Welcome to the Shadow of History channel. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out more videos like this one. Dressed in a pirate costume beside his mother Stanley Ann, a young Barack Obama posed for a Halloween photo in the 1960s, capturing an ordinary childhood moment for the man who would one day become President of the United States. In April 1945, Allied forces liberated the Dachau concentration camp, where this photograph captured a young Russian prisoner in a state of extreme emaciation, bearing silent witness to the unimaginable suffering endured within those walls. At the San Juan de los Lagos Fair in Jalisco, Mexico, photojournalist Enrique Diaz captured in 1940 a female penitent performing severe autoflagellation, her crown of thorns, veil, and cactus-pierced chest expressing a profound living tradition of sacrifice and devotion. Photographed around 1920, Queen Genapil stands as a portrait of dignity and grace, the final queen consort of Mongolia, whose image preserves a fleeting moment before the sweeping political changes that would soon transform her nation forever. In 1968, a 7-year-old George Clooney posed alongside his father Nick, his mother Nina, and his sister Ada, a simple family snapshot capturing one of Hollywood's future stars in the unassuming warmth of an ordinary American home. Photographed in May 1860 and again at the war's end, Abraham Lincoln's side-by-side portraits reveal the devastating physical toll of the Civil War presidency, his face appearing to have aged an entire decade in just 4 years. On August 21, 1997, just 10 days before her tragic death, our Princess Diana and 15-year-old Prince William were photographed walking and smiling together after a mother and son lunch at La Familia in Chelsea, London, in what are believed to be their final images together. An Auschwitz survivor holds her great-granddaughter in a tender embrace, the faint blue tattoo on her arm, a number meant to strip her of identity, standing as a permanent testament to survival against the Nazi camp's murderous brutality. Muhammad Ali married 16-year-old Belinda Boyd in 1967 in an arranged union, but years of personal pressures, including Ali's affair with Veronica Porche, led Khalila Ali to divorce him in 1977, forever marking one of sport's most complicated private stories. In 1941, Estonians of all ages were loaded onto trains and deported to Siberia by Soviet forces, part of a deliberate campaign to replace Estonia's population with Russian settlers, with nearly 95,000 people deported from the Baltic region in a single week. Taken in 1940, this photograph shows 7-year-old Lena Medina alongside her 2-year-old son, Gerardo, a haunting image that remains one of the most extraordinary and disturbing medical cases in recorded human history. In 1960, Otto Frank returned to the secret annex in Amsterdam, where his family had hidden during World War II, standing once more in the space that had sheltered Anne Frank before her capture and death at the hands of the Nazi regime. Mahatma Gandhi and Abdul Ghaffar Khan, known as the Frontier Gandhi, she stood together in this photograph, two of history's most committed advocates of nonviolent resistance, united in a shared vision of justice and human dignity. On opening day in 1937, crowds gathered at the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, celebrating the completion of one of the most ambitious and iconic engineering achievements of the 20th century. In 1961, jazz legend Louis Armstrong played his trumpet for his wife Lucille Wilson before the Great Sphinx and the Pyramids of Giza in Egypt, blending the sounds of American jazz with one of the ancient world's most enduring monuments. On July 14, 1930, at Einstein's home in Kepputh near Berlin, Nobel laureates Albert Einstein and Rabindranath Tagore met and were photographed together, representing one of the most remarkable intellectual encounters of the 20th century. In August 1961, an East German border guard defied direct orders during the construction of the Berlin Wall, lifting barbed wire to allow a young boy to cross and reunite with his family on the other side of the newly divided city. At the close of World War II in 1945, the RMS Queen Elizabeth arrived in New York Harbor carrying between 10 and 15,000 Allied soldiers home, one of many voyages made alongside her sister ship, the Queen Mary, to transport the returning troops. In April 1945, Allied forces liberated the Buchenwald concentration camp, one of the largest on German soil, where hundreds of thousands of prisoners, including political opponents, Jews, and prisoners of war, had been held since the camp's establishment in 1937. Queen Victoria posed in 1897 alongside her Indian attendant and Urdu teacher Munshi Abdul Karim, who served as both her confidant and Hindustani tutor during the final years of her long reign over the British Empire. Around 1920, Japanese picture brides immigrated to the United States to marry Japanese men already settled there, their unions arranged through exchanged letters and photographs, and legally formalized in Japan before the women ever set sail across the Pacific. During his 1972 mission to the Moon, astronaut Charles Duke left a photograph of his family on the lunar surface, planting a personal human moment in the most remote and otherworldly location any family portrait has ever been placed. At the Kennedy Space Center on January 28, 1986, the family of teacher Krista McAuliffe watched in horror as the Space Shuttle Challenger broke apart shortly after launch, their expressions capturing the moment a national celebration turned to tragedy. In 1948, shoppers at Kresge's department store in Newark, New Jersey, could ride an in-store monorail, a glimpse into the post-war era's optimistic fascination with futuristic technology and modern retail experiences. A before and after photograph from the 1890s documents the transformation of young Thomas Moore following his enrollment at the Regina Indian Industrial School in Saskatchewan, Canada, are illustrating the forced assimilation policies imposed on Indigenous children of that era. Around 1952, a lone shepherd was photographed in an abandoned sacred grove in Italy, a solitary figure moving through a landscape that had once held deep ceremonial meaning across centuries of Italian history. French soldiers were photographed in northern Saudi Arabia around October 26, 1990, deployed as part of the multinational coalition that had gathered in the region during the Gulf War crisis following Iraq's invasion of Kuwait. In 1983, NASA's space shuttle was captured riding atop a modified Boeing 747 shuttle carrier aircraft while the supersonic Concorde sliced across the sky in the background. A photograph that will never be replicated since both aircraft have since been retired. Photographed from the rear of a Manhattan apartment by Alfred Stieglitz in 1915, this nighttime cityscape of New York captures the urban energy of a metropolis already reshaping itself into the towering skyline it would soon become. Ozzy Osbourne and Sharon were photographed together in 1985, an image that captured both the intensity and the enduring personal bond of one of rock music's most recognizable couples at the height of Ozzy's controversial career. Private Joseph Bailey of the Sheffield Battalion was photographed during the Battle of the Somme in 1916, an image made all the more haunting by the knowledge that it was taken just hours before he was killed in action. Designed by Leonardo da Vinci in 1516, this spiral staircase stands as one of the final architectural visions of the Renaissance master, created in the last years of his life and embodying his extraordinary command of both art and engineering. Barack and Michelle Obama were photographed on their wedding day in 1992, marking the beginning of a partnership that would eventually lead them to the White House as one of the most widely recognized couples in American political history. John F. Kennedy was photographed on the 1960 campaign trail in West Virginia, pressing the flesh and building momentum during one of the most consequential presidential campaigns of the 20th century. This portrait of Nikola Tesla, taken in 1893, captures the Serbian-American inventor at the height of his pioneering work in electrical systems, a figure whose contributions to science would shape the modern world in ways still felt today. In Texas in 1913, a 10-year-old boy began his working day at 3 in the morning before attending school, one of countless child laborers whose exhausting lives were documented to expose the widespread exploitation of children in early 20th century America. In November 1994, serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer was beaten to death in prison by fellow inmate Christopher Scarver, who later stated that Dahmer had provoked fellow prisoners by fashioning his prison food into shapes resembling human body parts. Following the 2015 Dieselgate scandal, thousands of Volkswagen and Audi diesel vehicles were bought back from American owners after the companies admitted to installing software to cheat emissions tests, leaving vast rows of cars parked across remote lots, including the Mojave Desert. Taken in early April 1910, this final known photograph of Mark Twain shows the author just weeks before his death on April 21, 1910, at the age of 74, capturing the closing chapter of a life that had defined American literature. Port Authority officer Christopher Amoroso was photographed on the morning of September 11, 2001, his face bloodied and covered in ash as he helped evacuate survivors from the World Trade Center before returning into the towers from which he never emerged. On September 15, 1896, the Missouri-Kansas-Texas Railroad staged a deliberate head-on collision of 2 locomotives in Crush, Texas, drawing an estimated 40,000 spectators. But unexpected boiler explosions killed 2 onlookers and injured others in what had been billed as safe entertainment. In January 1937, 9-year-old Eunice Winstead married 22-year-old Charlie Johns in Tennessee, a union that sparked national outrage and led the state to swiftly pass a law setting the minimum marriage age at 16, with other states soon following. Taken in late April 1945 outside the Reich Chancellery in Berlin, one of the last known photographs of Adolf Hitler shows him in full military uniform as Soviet forces closed in on the city and the Third Reich entered its final hours. In this photograph from 1944 or 1945, a German mother collapses in grief at a casualty list board after learning her son had not survived, a deeply human image of the devastating personal losses endured by families on all sides of the war. A man poses before a Soyuz rocket at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan in the 1980s, a casual portrait set against one of the most powerful symbols of the Soviet space program during the height of the Cold War era. Queen Maria of Romania was photographed in 1896, a portrait capturing the early years of a monarch who would go on to become one of the most influential and internationally recognized royal figures in early 20th century European history. During a 1986 state visit to China, Queen Elizabeth II stood before the over 2,000-year-old terracotta warriors in Xi'an, viewing one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries of the modern world on behalf of the British Crown. In 1955, 4.5 megabytes of data filled 62,500 punched cards stacked in a towering arrangement, a striking illustration of how far computing storage technology has traveled in the 7 decades since that photograph was taken. In 1953, archaeologists uncovering the Vix tomb in France discovered the burial of a 6th century BC Celtic princess, surrounded by extraordinary treasures, including a massive bronze vase, silver pieces, and a gold torque, making it one of the greatest Celtic finds of the 20th century. During the devastating siege of Leningrad in 1943, a hippopotamus named Belle survived largely due to her dedicated caretaker, Yevdokia Dashina, who carried water from the Neva River and applied camphor oil to keep the animal alive through the brutal wartime conditions. On April 10, 1944, a transport carrying 935 Italian Jews arrived at Auschwitz, where SS doctors sent 701 of them directly to the gas chambers during the selection process, among them 71-year-old Attilio della Torre of Florence. In May 1943, photographer Arthur Siegel documented the Liberty ship cargo transports under construction at the Bethlehem Fairfield shipyards in Baltimore, capturing the extraordinary industrial scale of American wartime production for the Office of War Information. When the Nazis arrived in Korolovka in the fall of 1942, matriarch Esther Sturmer refused to lead her family into the ghetto, as the Gestapo began forcing the city's Jewish population onto trucks bound for concentration camps and ordering others to dig their own graves. This photograph from 1917 shows electric charging cars already in operation, a reminder that battery-powered vehicles are not a modern invention, but a technology that existed over a century ago, long before the era of the gasoline-powered automobile's dominance. This photograph brings together 4 generations of soldiers in a single image, a rare portrait spanning decades of military service within one family, connecting the sacrifices of different eras through the shared bond of those who served. Lauren Barry, 14, and Nicole Collins, 16, were best friends and students at Bega High School who shared a love of horse riding and bushwalking, a photograph that preserves the memory of 2 young lives and the ordinary joy they carried. This late 1800s photograph captures the coastal village of Staithes in North Yorkshire, England, a small fishing community perched at the edge of the sea, its weathered buildings and narrow lanes unchanged for generations along the rugged Yorkshire coastline. In 1918, a pyramid of World War I German helmets was assembled at Grand Central Terminal in New York City, a striking and symbolic display marking the approaching end of a conflict that had claimed millions of lives across Europe. This 1989 aerial photograph of the Kowloon walled city in Hong Kong reveals one of the most densely populated places on Earth, a largely ungoverned urban settlement of tightly packed structures that would be demolished just a few years later. Emperor Hirohito of Japan and Empress Nagako were photographed with their children and grandchildren in the 1970s, a rare family portrait of the imperial household that offered a private glimpse into the personal life of one of history's most significant monarchs. The remains of the Eureka Building in Chicago were photographed in 1920 after firefighting efforts in extreme winter conditions left the structure encased in ice, a dramatic image of the destruction and frozen aftermath that followed a major urban fire. In 1918, American farmer John Meintz was tarred and feathered by a mob in Texas, targeted for his German heritage and accused of not supporting war bond drives, a violent act of wartime nativism that illustrated the persecution faced by German Americans during World War I. The Esso Hibernia tanker was photographed under construction at Wallsend in the United Kingdom in 1970, capturing the scale and complexity of industrial shipbuilding during an era when British yards were still among the most productive in the world. Albert Einstein and Marie Curie were photographed together in conversation near a lake around 1929. two Nobel Prize-winning scientists whose combined contributions to physics and chemistry had already permanently changed the course of human understanding of the natural world. This 17th century emerald cup, carved from 252 carats of pure emerald and inscribed with Persian verses, once belonged to Mughal Emperor Jahangir, standing today as a remarkable testament to the artistic and cultural grandeur of the Mughal Empire at its height. Photographed in 1978, 3 years after its founding by Bill Gates and Paul Allen on April 4, 1975, the entire Microsoft staff fit within a single group portrait, a humble beginning for a company that would go on to reshape the global technology industry. The Swedish warship Vasa, raised from the seabed centuries after sinking, is today recognized as the world's best-preserved 17th century ship, its survival offering historians and visitors an extraordinarily rare and detailed window into the naval craftsmanship of that era. This ornate 16th century helmet, crafted for Holy Roman Emperor Ferdinand II of the Habsburg dynasty, exemplifies the extraordinary level of artisanship devoted to ceremonial armor for European royalty during the height of Renaissance metalwork and imperial pageantry. A massive sawfish measuring 14 feet and weighing approximately 650 pounds was caught in 1938 near Sabine Pass by Mac Calais aboard his boat, the I'm Alone, with the extraordinary catch later photographed on display at a Sears store in Port Arthur, Texas. Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt were photographed together in 1994, capturing two of Hollywood's most prominent leading men at a moment when both were near the height of their respective careers and among the most recognizable actors in the world. Shortly after resigning as Prime Minister in 1955, Winston Churchill was moved to tears during a tribute to his legacy, a rare public display of emotion from a man who had led Britain through its most perilous hours and would remain a member of Parliament until 1964. This remastered photograph of Vincent van Gogh, taken around 1873 when he was 19 years old, is the only surviving photographic image of the painter's face, offering an extraordinarily rare glimpse of one of art history's most celebrated and studied figures. The Great Wall of China, continuously built from the 3rd century BC through the 17th century AD along the country's northern border, stretches more than 20,000 kilometers to its final endpoint, where this photograph captures the ancient fortification meeting the open landscape. The United States patent for toilet paper, filed in 1891, clearly illustrated the correct over-the-top hanging orientation, settling in official documentation what has remained one of domestic life's most enduring and lighthearted debates for well over a century. Fred Gwynne, who would later achieve fame as Herman Munster in the 1964 television series, I served in the United States Navy during World War II as a radio man aboard a submarine chaser operating in the Pacific Theater before turning to his acting career. Photographed in 1908, 15-year-old Vance had already worked as a trapper boy for several years, earning 75 cents a day for 10 hours of labor spent opening and shutting a single door in the mines, waiting in near-total idleness for coal cars to pass. Between 1945 and 1947, up to 70,000 British women sailed to the United States to reunite with their American husbands, with this photograph showing the HMS Victorious crowded with women and children crossing the Atlantic toward their new lives. In the 1940s, American soldiers carried photographs of their loved ones behind clear grip panels on their M1911 pistols, a practice known as sweetheart grips, keeping a personal reminder of home close at hand through the hardships of wartime service. These fossil remains of a giant armadillo, uncovered in Argentina and estimated to be 20,000 years old, offer a remarkable glimpse into the megafauna that once roamed South America during the Pleistocene epoch, long before human civilization took hold. This school photograph of Joseph Stalin, taken in the late 1880s when he was approximately 10 years old, captures the Soviet Union's future leader as an unremarkable child, offering no outward sign of the totalitarian power he would eventually seize and wield. Before AutoCAD's release in 1982 made digital drafting possible, mappers in the 1950s crafted every engineering drawing entirely by hand, using pencils, T-squares, and set squares, with any mistake potentially requiring the entire drawing to be started again from scratch. Princess Alexandra of the United Kingdom posed with her granddaughters, Princess Alexandra of Fife and Princess Maud of Fife, daughters of the Duke of Fife, who were the only descendants in the female line to receive the title of princess, connecting the lineages of William IV and Queen Victoria. Born with hypertrichosis, Stefan Bibrowski was exhibited as the Lion Man in the Barnum and Bailey Circus, yet those who knew him described him as cultured and kind, on a man who privately dreamed of becoming a dentist despite the spectacle the world made of his appearance. In 1923, Soviet poet and futurist Vladimir Goldschmidt was photographed in the act of hypnotizing a chicken, a surreal image that captures the eccentric and theatrical spirit of the early Soviet avant-garde intellectual scene in which he moved. This photograph from Paris in 1925 documents the Banquet of Mutilated Faces, a gathering of World War I veterans who had suffered severe facial injuries, a profoundly human assembly of men rebuilding their lives and identities in the aftermath of unprecedented wartime destruction. In 1987, Donald Trump met President Ronald Reagan, and at a time when Trump was known primarily as an influential New York real estate developer and a frequent subject of gossip columns, decades before his own entry into the political arena. Augustus Earle's 1822 watercolor captures Emperor Dom Pedro I on the day of his coronation in Rio de Janeiro, documenting the historic moment Brazil's first emperor was formally crowned in a ceremony that marked the young nation's assertion of its independent identity. Carved from large basalt blocks before 900 BC, the 17 Olmec colossal heads represent some of the earliest monumental sculpture in the Americas, their powerful and individualized faces enduring as one of the most striking legacies of the ancient Olmec civilization. In August 1941, Soviet prisoners of war captured during the early weeks of Operation Barbarossa were held in German transit camps before being transferred to concentration camps in Germany and occupied Poland, among the millions swept up in the Eastern Front's catastrophic violence. This 1868 photograph from Lincoln, Nebraska, features an exceptionally tall man standing among ordinary passers-by, a striking image from the American frontier era, when Lincoln was still a young city rapidly growing in the wake of the Civil War. A man poses for a painting while swimming in a Venice canal, a remarkable image of artistic dedication that captures the city's unique relationship with the water that has defined and sustained it for centuries. This early 1900s photograph shows a man traveling in a cart pulled by a goat, a charming glimpse of the unconventional and improvised modes of transport that were still common in everyday life at the turn of the 20th century. In 1989, Doug Coombs was photographed dropping into Corbet's Couloir in Wyoming, one of skiing's most notoriously steep and exposed lines, an image that captures the fearless precision of one of extreme skiing's most celebrated pioneers. Young women in Norway were photographed in the 1890s, their image preserving a quiet moment of everyday life in the Scandinavian countryside during a decade of significant social and cultural change across Northern Europe. Perched 800 feet above the ground in 1929, a skyscraper construction worker sat calmly at the edge of a steel beam, one of the thousands of laborers who built New York City's iconic skyline with little more than nerve and an absence of safety equipment.